You think you know the story of the fall of Adam and Eve and of man in the Garden of Eden, and I'm sure you've heard the story about how Eve ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because she was enticed by the serpent who was there in the garden. But most people don't really know the higher dimensional revelation of that story, because we get told it from a religious bias, not from a real spirit frequency dimension from the perspective of God. Today I want to give you that perspective. You see, the Garden of Eden was not a physical place located here somewhere on the earth. It was a transitory place. It was transitional. It was a place above the physical earth, a location that gave it a real standout location. And when God created the place, it had a spiritual life force to it. It wasn't just a material place like trees and plants that we know of today, although there were trees and plants there, but they were infused with the very Spirit of God. Imagine the flowers sing and they're infused with the life of the Spirit, and they interact with the way that they move. The trees were alive. Butterflies had a frequency when they moved. There was a rhythm of light that flowed from them. The animals that God created, they were infused with the very life of the Spirit of God themselves. They didn't look like a lion looks today, the same shape and form, but infused with light and amazing frequency of light that only God could create in that animal and that being. And so here we have this place called the Garden of Eden. And if we look at the reality of Adam and Eve, they were created. God created Adam, formed him, and breathed into him something the Bible calls nephesh, the breath of life, and he became a living soul. Adam became a being filled with light. God breathed the very light of his being into Adam, and Adam began to emanate the light of God. And Eve was taken from what many misunderstand is called the rib of Adam, but the rib of Adam, and God formed her from a place within the man. And that way he could see his inner beauty when he looked at her. He would see the beauty that God placed within him. This is what God wanted Adam to see, the beauty of God when he looked at Eve. And God gave them liberty and freedom to live in that place. And he said, you may eat of all the trees. Trees are symbolic of inspiration, light. They weren't eating like you physically eat today. They ate by partaking of the entire frequency spectrum that garden emanated. The sounds of it, there was a voice in the music, there was a voice in the form, there was a voice in the color spectrums, there was a voice, and it emanated and expressed and communicated to Adam and Eve the very structure of its nature. And they were able to partake of those trees. But God restricted them and said there's one tree. It's called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You see, there's this dual influence. It comes from this thing. Don't eat from that one. And God said in the day that you eat from that, in that day you will die. God knew they would eat from that. He knew that there was a day appointed for them to do that. So it was not a surprise to God that it happened. So lo and behold, the tempter came.